Christmas is in the air. There's Christmas lights, Christmas trees, Christmas wreaths, Christmas sweaters. We're so glad you joined us today. My name is Nancy Burgess and I work with the Bridge Kids here at LifeBridge Church, and I've got a few things to share with you about what's coming up at LifeBridge. We are finishing up our Christmas night celebrations with our Christmas Eve service on December 24th at 5 p.m. If you feel comfortable, come in person. We will be there and we are going to have candles and silent night. The kids will be in the service and there'll be a special story for them. So if you feel good about being there, join us then. If you don't, you want to just stay online, if you go onto our website, you can click on the link that says Christmas Eve service. Join us at 5 when it's happening live, or if you miss any part of it, once the service is over, it'll just start and you can watch the whole thing start to finish. We hope to see you at Christmas Eve either way. The weekend after Christmas, we are not going to host an in-person service, but join us online as Pastor Brendan is going to bring us an experience that will help us reflect on the past year and a way to look ahead. Don't miss it. It's going to be awesome. Out with 2020. In with 2021. We are looking forward to a great new year with hope and joy and expectation for God to do great things. We are going to be online or in person on Sunday, January 3rd, 9 a.m. Special guest speaker, Ryan Daffron. He's a new Navy chaplain and he's going to bring us some great things that will challenge and encourage us. Don't miss it. Yay for 2021! We always want to stay connected with you, even more important in this new year. So if you haven't been getting our e-blast or any information from church, or maybe you would just like a pastor to pray with you, you need some encouragement, you want to be a part of a life group, fill out the Connect card, click on it, and we will get connected to each other so you can stay connected with us and we stay connected with you. If you plan on partnering with us by doing some end-of-the-year giving, there's a few ways you can do it. You can bring it to our live service and drop it in the basket. You can click on the link below and go to our website and give online, or you can mail it into the church office. Just make sure you have it postmarked by December 31st. Thank you for partnering with us as we help people find and follow Jesus. Because of your love and support, you have made that happen. Thanks for joining us today, and now we are going to continue in our 4th Advent reflection led by Pastor Mark. We're glad you joined us during this whole Advent season, and we hope this reflection continues to bless your heart.
And in that region, there were shepherds out in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were filled with fear. And the angel said to them, "Be not afraid, for behold, I bring you good news of a great joy, which will come to all the people. For to you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign for you. You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling cloths and lying in a manger." And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among men with whom he is pleased." When the angels went away from them into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let us go over to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has made known to us." And they went with haste, and found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in a manger. And when they saw it, they made known the saying which had been told them concerning this child. And all who heard it wondered at what the shepherds told them. But Mary kept all these things, pondering them in her heart. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all they had heard and seen, as it had been told them. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose, and have come to worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, They saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
Well, here we are. We've made it to the end of our Christmas Advent series. We're trying to get a new perspective, a fresh perspective on an old story. So we've been looking at the characters that the Bible reveals to us are really central to the story of Jesus' coming. The first week, Robbie introduced us to these misfit messengers, the shepherds that were out in the fields and really disenfranchised and just cut off from regular society that God invited into the Christmas story. And that's just like God, to invite those who are far off into relationship with Him. Brennan continued encouraging us to have a new perspective on Christmas and on this year and on our lives as he looked into the life of Mary, this teenager who had her life really flipped upside down because of this unintended, unplanned pregnancy that was impossible, but yet possible with God. And she's invited into and begins to ponder all the things that God is teaching her because of her new vision and new perspective after she encounters God. Nancy then talked about Joseph, the man who has to navigate the public shame and the whispers of being the husband to a wife who's pregnant before they're married, at least the engaged husband to be. And so today we're going to wrap up our story with really what I think might be the most awkward, or the characters of the story as revealed in the Bible that don't fit in. They might be a little bit like Buddy the Elf in the movie Elf, who shows up in the middle of Manhattan in New York City, full dressed in elf costume as a fully grown human adult that's tall. And he just stands out. He gets a lot of awkward glances. And when you read about the wise men or the magi from the East, they seem to be, really infused into the story from we don't know where. They come and then they go and we don't hear about them. And you wonder what's going on. And I want to take a glance at these wise men because they go on a long journey to see Jesus. Now, many of us have been on a long journey, not only this year, as 2020 has been so different than we envisioned back in January, but many of you have been on a long journey in life, trying to figure out who God is and what Jesus has to offer you. Well, I tell you that today, as you watch this, as you listen to this, I think God is going to teach you things through the life and the experience of these wise men coming to see Jesus. Maybe you've been on a long journey before. I remember when I was in high school, I signed up to go on a really outdoor, backwoods, backpacking adventure trip with my youth group. Now, we had a big youth group at the time, but there was only 2 of us who signed up. Me and a friend of mine, Eric Charnkos, we signed up. There were 2 leaders that were going to lead us onto a journey into the Wallowa Mountains in eastern Oregon, a beautiful location, really isolated. Some people call it the Alps of Oregon. And so we loaded up for this 4-day, 3-night journey out in the mountains. We had to carry everything on a backpack, including tents and sleeping bags and food. We had to take a filter because we were going to get water out of streams and lakes. We wanted to make sure it was safe. And so I loaded up. I made plans. I had to go buy supplies. I signed up to go on this trip because I wanted to be a part of this journey. Now, some of you might ask, why would I go on this trip with just one friend and a couple of leaders when I could go to Disneyland or the beach or something more enjoyable? I wanted to experience something new. I wanted to see something I had never seen at that point in my life, and so I went. Now, when we turn to the story in Matthew chapter 2, we're introduced to these characters called the wise men or magi. I want to read a couple verses as we start this journey with the wise men to Jesus. Matthew chapter 2, starting in verse 1, says, "Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, 'Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him.'" So the wise men we see, and the first thing I want you to learn from their life is that they were looking for God. They were looking for signs from God. Really, that God was leaving kind of cosmic breadcrumbs behind as these men were looking for God. Now, we don't know a lot about these wise men. They just show up, and in just a few verses, they're gone, never to be heard from again. And so history tells us a few things that we can surmise about where they came from, where they went, and what they were about. We gather that they were most likely from Persia, maybe even from the city of Babylon, which we've been learning about in our series through the book of Daniel. These astrologers, according to Daniel, the Chaldeans, the magicians, were all in pursuit of legitimate learning. In fact, they're the ones who really came up with a pretty accurate calendar. And so these astrologers were looking for wisdom, for knowledge in the stars, and found a star the night it rose for Jesus' birth. Now, who knows what made them see the star? Maybe Daniel, several hundred years before that, had pointed out some of the Old Testament prophecies that there was going to be a king born, and a star would be one of the signs of his arrival. Maybe they were passing that knowledge on, and a few of these astrologers were looking and saw that. But man, what a lesson for us to learn. With all the things that are going on in our world, for us to stop and be open to looking for God. I want to invite us into a short season of looking for God during Christmas that would continue for the rest of our lives. A short decision to start looking for God, much like these wise men were looking from a foreign land, from far away from where God was going to show up. They were looking and they found Him. I wonder if you'd be interested in looking for God this Christmas with me to see what God might reveal about Himself. Well, I'm glad these wise men didn't just happen to notice this new star and then sit around and think, whoa, check out this new star, guys. I think I'm going to name it. Did you know you can do that? You can go online. I saw it this week. You can register a star in someone's name for 1995, and there's plenty of stars out there, so go for it. But this cosmic sign that God placed in the stars for these learned men is what caused them to want to go on a journey. It wasn't just this active observation, it wasn't just this passive observation. It was this active response to God revealing Himself. You know, I try to imagine what their journey must have been like. There's not a lot of details, but we know they were from the east and they had to journey far. In fact, at the end of the story, when King Herod is ticked off, he has all the male babies under 2 years old be killed, and it's a tragedy. Because this journey probably took months, if not maybe a couple years for completion. You know, when I went on my journey back in high school, I took a few things with me. We had, a trail map, and our leader Jim had us take turns kind of navigating where we were going. I mean, he double-checked to make sure we weren't going in the wrong direction. But we learned a little bit about navigating, and we took a compass so we could always get our bearings. It's amazing what happens when you get out in the wilderness and you're surrounded by forests and you don't really know which way is which. And life can be somewhat like that. I had these tools. You know, we didn't have GPS. I didn't have a cell phone back then. I even took some binoculars. So when we stopped and we had a great viewpoint, or when I could, observe some, wildlife or something like that, I could pull out these binoculars and observe what was happening around me, see things I had never seen before. And that was just for a 4-day journey. Now, these wise men had to pack up for months, if not years, of being gone. I mean, what a sacrifice. They didn't know where the destination was going to lead them. They just had a direction. They didn't know how far the star was. They just followed in the direction of the star. You know, they didn't have any state parks to make reservations at. They didn't have any grocery stores to stock up along the way, although I'm sure there were villages and towns where they could find things. They didn't load up the Winnebago or buy plane tickets. They got their packs ready. They probably loaded up a few camels with their supplies, and they set out. You know, as the story continues, we pick it up in Matthew chapter 2, starting in verse 3. It says, "When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, 'And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler, who will shepherd my people Israel.' Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly, and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, 'Go, search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, that I too may come and worship him.'" See, the story of wise men tells us not only do we need to be looking for God, but once we start looking for God, we need to be willing to go on a journey towards God as well. Now, this was a costly journey for the wise men. When I signed up for that backpack trip back in high school, I think it probably cost 40 or 50 bucks to pay the leaders, to get some supplies, to drive us out there for gas. I had to buy some groceries, so there was cost involved for me to go on this journey. But for them, it was much greater than that. They had the cost of supplies. They had to take along their own finances to finance the journey for who knows how long they were going to be gone. They had to pay the cost of being separated from their homes, their families, their friends, and their work. But they were committed. I wonder if you've ever been committed to a journey. Maybe it's a practical one like my backpack trip for 4 days. Maybe it's more of a life journey or a metaphorical journey. You know, we've been on journeys like to the right career, and you're willing to pay the price to get trained, to put time involved, to go to school. Maybe it's a journey toward the right relationship, of investing time and energy into person to discover whether or not they could be a spouse. Maybe it's the right home to purchase, and all the planning and all the sacrifice it takes to save up for that down payment, and to find the right location, and to find a home to start your life in. Or maybe it's the right retirement plan, or the right benefits that you can have, that you work towards, a journey so that you can retire. Now, these are all worthy journeys. They're worth going on, but they're not journeys that can satisfy. I mean, they can satisfy you temporarily, but not completely. The journey to God is what we were designed for, and that's the journey that will satisfy us, not just for this life, but for eternity. I wonder if you've decided to take that journey with God yet. I mean, maybe you've seen signs of Him, maybe you've heard things about Him, but you haven't been willing to start a journey toward Him, to start paying a price to discover who God really is. And the wise men were looking for something more. And when they saw the star, the indication of God, they went on a journey. And I can imagine this group journey as they were, as night was falling and it was starting to get dark. They were packing up their site, getting ready to set out to find the star and to follow the star that would come out at night. Probably journeying all night long until the star went away because of the sun. And then they'd set up camp, maybe get some food, get some rest, only to do it again. Setting up their tents to sleep during the day, to rest. I wonder if this year for you has been like that journey. Just over and over of starting out again and a challenging journey. But maybe there's points on that journey when God has just said, just rest, just take a day, just relax. I'm gonna be here for you in the morning, or I'll be here for you tonight when the star showed up again, and so we can continue our journey. I wonder if your year has been leading you to discover a sense of joy in God. Because if the star you've been following hasn't been satisfying you, the question I would gently ask you is, I wonder if you've been following the wrong star. The star that leads us toward God is really the star that satisfies. The other stars we pursue in life end up leaving us wanting more. So maybe that's you, and you can pause for a second and ask yourself, what star have I been following this year? A story says that King Herod and the people were troubled by the news that the wise men brought. It's an interesting observation. I can understand why King Herod was troubled as the king, at least of this area. He's under Roman rule, but he's the king of this area. To find out that there's some other king on the scene would be troubling. I'm a little confused or troubled at why the people would be troubled. Why would the people be troubled that there's another king? Maybe it's because they've got enough kings and Caesars ruling over them to have another one. They realize it's just going to be more taxes, more rules, more hoops to jump through. And so they're not really interested in hearing about another king or quote unquote king. But I believe that just like King Herod was troubled at this news 2,000 years ago, many people are still troubled when they hear about Jesus today. You see, it's troubling news for some to hear about the possibility of a king, the possibility of a God. Because if there is a king, if there is a God that we're supposed to search for and know, then that means that we're subject to that king. We're subject to that God. And for that reason alone, many people are troubled at the thought, the mere idea that there could potentially be a God. Maybe that's you. I don't believe that described the wise men. In fact, they were the opposite. They were so in tune and longing to meet this king that it changed their entire lives as they went on this trek to find the king. Verse 9, our story continues and really wraps up what we know about the wise men. It says, after listening to the king, they went on their way. And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. It seems like the star was moving and guiding them on their journey. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. Now we see the third point about the experience or the example that these wise men set for us is that these men, these explorers, these astrologers, were on a journey. But it wasn't just a journey to experience the outdoors or to have fun with their friends. It was a journey of worship. It was a journey to worship. Verse 2 stated that intention right from the beginning as they were looking and found a star. They wanted to go meet this king to worship him. So on this journey of highs and lows and twists and turns and cold nights and long nights, maybe days when they couldn't see the star, days when they were resting, worship is what drove them on their journey. You see, their focus was worship. This was their intention, this was their decision, but their experience was joy. Did you catch verse 10? It says, when they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding joy. They were exceedingly joyful when they saw the star. So their focus was worship, but their experience was joy. I believe that's what God is inviting us into on this journey of worship to Him. See, it's not so much the question of if we're going to worship, but of who or what we're going to worship. See, the invitation of Christmas is to worship the King. It's to acknowledge that there is a King, that there is a God, and that you've been invited into this journey of worship toward Him so that we can experience joy along the way. I know this year has been challenging for many of us, for all of us. For some of you, may be overwhelming, but as our focus remains on worship, our experience can be of joy because we know that our worship is going to be realized one day, and our hope in Christ, the coming King, is going to be to satisfy all those desires. I want to invite you this Christmas season to end this year and start a new one with the intention of worshiping Jesus, that you might experience the joy that only He can deliver as you journey with Him.